Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and this is News and Week in Review, where we dive into a variety of news pieces. The topic of the week, which has since been changed to the hot games that we review on Board Game Geek, I still instinctively just say the same things because I've been saying them for so long that it's hard to break the pattern. But a variety of news pieces, the Board Game Hotness, the Board Game Geek Hotness, the videos of the week, the games I played, all those usual things. And this week, if I remember, we'll actually dive into a few comments as well. One thing I've been meaning to add is whenever I think there's a good comment and conversation, I want to start adding those to the week in review to go over them a bit more publicly. We'll see. Not like controversial stuff, just like a good question and answer kind of back and forth. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into it, starting off with news. Starting off with Board Game Wire. Gamma shifts, well, Board Game Wire being the site, not the news piece. Gamma shifts 2025 Expo dates after blowing past projections for space needed, signs another one-year Kentucky extension. Basically, Gamma Trade Expo, if you don't know, it's more of the industry convention. Gamma's the industry association and whatnot. They had their trade show in Kentucky this past year, and they had conflicts this upcoming year. They had conflicts with, I believe, the toy show, if I'm not, the toy fair or whatnot, if I'm not mistaken. And the toy fair is larger because board games are a part of the toy fair, but it's a much larger thing. And so people who want to go, distributors or retailers who want to go to both, would have to choose. And they basically go to shift that. This is not really relevant to most of you, but for those of you who are interested. And then they also signed a additional one-year Kentucky extension, which is a bit of a controversial aspect in that sense because they have, Kentucky does have some bills that have some anti-LGBT aspects to them. Frankly, I'm not as fully up to date on what they are or the details of them, but I know that the decision to have it in Kentucky, it was both a well-received trade show by those who went to it, meaning overall the feedback was very, very positive, but there are those who don't want to go out of protest, and I understand that conflict there. And by conflict, I mean I understand the being torn in different directions. As Gamma, you basically have to decide, do we listen to the overwhelming amount of feedback from people who had a positive experience with this year's trade show compared to past years in Reno, or are we mindful of those who feel marginalized in this conversation? And I don't think that's an easy conversation at all. I'm happy I don't have to make those decisions. It's I'm happy I don't have to make those decisions. Anyways, moving on over here, we have Indonesia. Indonesia has a pre-order up over here for Indonesia 3rd edition with some updates in case you want to check that out. Speaking of pre-orders, in fact, speaking of very specific pre-orders, we have Bus, also from Splotter Games. Splotter and Capstone this time. They have a pre-order up on Capstone Games website. If you want to go ahead and check this out, this has been out of print for a while and expensive. You can go ahead and get your hands on that. We also have some crowdfunding, a bunch of upcoming crowdfunding campaigns. This one's a little old over here. You can ignore this one. Neon Rain, I believe it's actually over by now. We have 2nd edition for Trekking the World. A changed adapted 2nd edition is going to be coming to crowdfunding. We have Agamonia coming shortly, May 21st. I should probably get my review up at this point. Agamonia is going to be launching shortly. We have Merchants of the Dark Road Secret Villages that's going to be launching, well, shortly, May 28th over here. So a bunch of these campaigns are going to be coming up if you want to check those out. We also have Dune War for Arrakis is currently has an expansion, the Desert War expansion, will be launching on GameFound sometime soon. We also have over here, we have Triton Noir with a new game called God's Heist. I don't know the details of this one. It's coming from Triton Noir, who brought you V-Sabotage and Assassin's Creed. It does seem like it might be leaning into similar veins. I don't know what the similarities or differences are, but from Triton Noir, they've generally put out very good games, so I'm looking forward to this one when we find out more on this. We also have, lastly, we have Jim Henson's Labyrinth, the board game, a 40th anniversary collection. Very intrigued how this campaign is going to go because this one's interesting because it's both a very popular IP, but the original board game wasn't rated that great. So I'm intrigued to see how the campaign does, what they do. Like, there are a bunch of comments asking, like, what do you plan on doing to address the feedback on the original game, which wasn't that great? And so I'm curious to see how this will go. This is going to be coming to you from Mantic Games, Jim Henson's Labyrinth. We also have other things. I'm talking as if it's over, but it's not over. We also have some semi-updates from a variety of creators over here, and semi-updates is the key word. We have Chai Tifa 2, which is long overdue. They posted their newest update, which, as most people would say, it doesn't mean anything until it actually shows up. Although there are boxes of board games, which is nice. That is a nice little thing there. I will say Chai Tifa 2 definitely falls in the category of their last campaign had a lot of people who are also upset over just not communication and game being delayed. And then just one day it showed up at people's doors, which means I've always been hopeful for Chai Tifa 2. Regardless of any hope of whether it shows up or not, I can't justify their actions as a creator in terms of the way they communicate or don't communicate for that matter, and the way they've literally said they do not read comments, they do not engage for their own mental health, which I do understand. They're for their own mental health. I do understand that, but they are prioritizing the mental health, which I respect, but at the cost of those they made a commitment to, which I don't. It's a very complicated middle line to figure out, and ultimately, whatever they've done to navigate it has only been in their best interest and not in their backers' best interest, which is the hard part. So, Chai Tifa 2, hopefully this update means something. Don't know if it matters as far as the reputation goes. We also have Legend Academy. Similar situation. Personally, I feel less harsh about Legend Academy. And to be clear, I've been, just because I want to be very transparent here, I've been friendly with both creators, with the creators of Chai Tifa 2 and the creators for Eldorado Games. Meaning in general, when I work with people ever, in terms of any coverage, I usually am friendly with people. Now, my friendliness has to adapt to how you handle yourself in the board game space. I can still appreciate you as a person while being incredibly critical of your actions and how that manifests. But I do think, depending on the way I perceive those actions, will also influence that bleed over effect of how I view you as a person as well. I would say in the case of Chai Tifa 2, I'm sure they're lovely people. I have very little respect for them as creators. In the case of Eldorado Games, I think there absolutely have been missteps along the way, and I think there's absolutely been communication gaps, and there absolutely are problems. I'm not trying to excuse that. But my overall perception, for a variety of reasons, variety of things that they've done in terms of the way they have tried to communicate, it is higher. Still critical, but higher. But in the case of Eldorado Games, they posted an update over here, so if we go to their updates, they have a new update basically saying, hey, fulfillment update over here. There are a lot of people, again, lots of people skeptical until actually something happens, which I understand. I'm very much looking forward to this game. I had a blast playing this one, really enjoyed it, and we'll see if or when it shows up. I think it is a when, not an if, but ultimately time will tell. And then lastly, we have over here Monumental. Monumental is one that I had a few people reach out to me asking me to speak on Monumental, and I might do a full video on the subject, I don't know, and the video will not actually be about Monumental so much as about the nature of content creators, their role within the space, and what people want out of content creators in terms of holding truth to power and all that. I might get into it into a certain video. I have to figure out the best way I want to approach it. But in the meantime, until that happens, we have Board Game Wire, who is a journalist in the space. I would say Board Game Wire very much takes a journalistic approach. King of Average, I've not always agreed with how he's handled certain things over the years. I've always liked him as a content creator, but have not always agreed. But I think in general, in more recent, months or a year by now, he has really taken a more journalistic approach to the way he handles board game news. I think there is a difference between a content creator who reviews board games and talks about board games versus a journalist who's trying to take a more press-based approach. I think there is a difference in those aspects. But in the meantime, Board Game Wire definitely takes a journalistic approach. And again, I just think it's different roles. I don't think it's better or worse. I just think it's a very different role within the space. But again, I might do a full video on it. We'll have to see. In the meantime, Monumental from Funforge Games, they also have had major issues over the years, issues I was not always aware of, but they've had issues in the way they communicate, the things they've said, the excuses they've given, and overall seems to be a terrible job in terms of the way they communicate, in terms of blocking people who ask questions, lots of things like that. You can go into this in the article, but Board Game Wire reached out to them, and they kind of gave an answer of that they're frustrated that people don't believe them, which the thing I would say here is I don't know, I wasn't involved in this interview. I will say I've worked with enough people internationally that I know that there can be international communication that is mixed up. So I'm giving them that grace before I say the next thing. So the grace might be that maybe there's a terminology adjustment that wasn't fully, didn't properly cross language lines, I don't know. But the idea that they're frustrated at backers being skeptical, to me, blows my mind. Again, regardless of what's happening or not, regardless of their insistence that they're right, all of that's fine. The idea that they're frustrated that other people are upset is, in the article, they kind of express the idea that, why would people not believe it's coming? It's all made up. Why would they do that? Well, if you communicated better and didn't make things up along the way, or not make things up, I shouldn't say that. If you didn't give excuses that come across poorly, I'll phrase it that way, want to give them, again, this is the problem. Whatever, I think I will do. I think I'm going to do a full video on the nature of how to talk to companies, hold them accountable, be in the proper position. It's very complicated stuff. It's very hard to be accurate and to be careful with your words and to be fair to every side correctly the whole way through and not just simply go with, it's hard. We'll do a full video. In the meantime, you can check out this Board Game Wire article. The short version is they still say it's coming, but it obviously, same situation as everything else, until it actually shows up. People can be skeptical and people will be skeptical. And that's basically what we have for the news, which brings us to the Board Game Geek Hotness review. In general, this is where I go over 5 or so games from the Board Game Geek Hotness, talking about why they're there, if I know why they're there. In some cases I don't. Although in this week, I think a bunch of them are just due to the Board Game Geek ratings. They recently had the Board Game Geek Awards, which are not called that. It's called something else, but whatever they're called, I can't remember offhand. But a bunch of those have just been games that have been featured very heavily in the Board Game Geek Awards, so they've gotten a lot more clicks. In general, I try to focus on the arrows trending up as opposed to the arrows trending down, because the arrows trending up are more exciting. The arrows trending down are when things are dropping. So we have a bunch of crowdfunding campaigns. We have Rove over here. We have Hannibal and Hammercar. Those are just crowdfunding campaigns that are currently active. We have Forsaken, which obviously had the whole... Did I cover the Forsaken thing? I think I covered the Forsaken thing, right? The Forsaken and CGS basically have a copyright dispute back and forth. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but in front of the scenes, it's not been a good look for CGS over Forsaken. Again, behind the scenes, don't know. In front of the scenes, CGS basically issued takedown notices against various creators who had videos up for the game, which kind of basically they, in their attempt to deal with a copyright legal dispute, they involved other parties, which I think generally puts people against you as a creator. They put you against, like if you're going after random people who weren't involved, why? Now they did release a statement on their Chronicles of Vinegar Apocalypse update. They released a statement basically saying, hey, that wasn't the intent. The lawyers were acting a bit like, with more initiative than they should have. So there is that grace to a certain extent. But again, obviously not the best look overall. But again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. All we know is there is a copyright dispute between the two companies. CGS says they tried to resolve it behind the scenes and they were ignored before they eventually took it this way, before they went with the legal takedowns and all that. And obviously Game Nerds, or not Game Nerds, Game Trays is basically saying, hey, we did nothing wrong and these things were just replacing the art. And again, I don't know. Here's what I will say. This is conjecture. This is not feedback. This is conjecture. I don't know what went on behind the scenes. What I do know is perceptionally, this is perception, this is all conjecture, there's nothing else. This is the nature of trying to be a journalist and a content creator, having opinions, but actually take a journalistic approach. Very complicated stuff. To do right is complicated. To talk about things is easy. To talk about with responsibility is harder. But I will say that it's interesting to me, and I'm a fan of Creative Game Studios, and I'm a fan of Game Trace. I'm a fan of Forsaken. I'm a fan of everyone in the mix here, so it's a hard conversation. But it's interesting to me that CGS says, hey, we tried addressing this, and then we had to go legal. And Game Trace is like, hey, we changed the art. Because in realizing this, initially I would say, perceptionally it's not a good look for CGS, but with that kind of mindset, it almost seems like it might not be a good look for Game Trace either. Because when they were hit with the legal notification, they're changing their art. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Maybe we'll find out more, maybe we won't, but it does look like your projects are safe either way. Past that, this is all from the Hotness, so we'll kind of get into a mini conversation around the Hotness, which I guess is a good conversation. We have Salton Sea climbing over here. I assume that's going to be because of in general, like I said, the BG Awards. A bunch of games that didn't have a clear reason why they'd climb. Salton Sea did have a post in the Board Game Geek News about the design approach, or was that Salton Sea? No, that was Sand. Sand was higher because of that. But Salton Sea, probably because of the Board Game Awards. We have what's called Faraway over here. This one's just released to retail, so Faraway from Pandasaurus Games, just released to retail, so likely getting a little bit more buzz attention there. Dune Imperium Uprising, likely because of the awards going on in general. We have Sky Team because of the awards. It won a bunch of awards overall, and that's kind of what we have over here. A lot of things being moved up because of awards as opposed to any other stronger reasons. And Sand is #1, which I'm still surprised by, but again, I personally didn't love Sand, but it did get a whole thread in the BGG Hotness and whatnot in the BGG News, and in general the awards as well would have it there as well. So not a lot of big changes in the BGG Hotness this week, unfortunately, but with that's a good tangent to go ahead and move into comment replies before I forget to do it for the 3rd week in a row. I have forgotten to do it for the past 2 weeks in case that wasn't obvious. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into comment replies. So basically, these are a few comments on some past videos. In general, just going into, I think, that are interesting conversations, including some on Sand. So let's go ahead and tackle one on my top 15 games of 2022 that faded. Okay, there's a question, and it's, I think, based on Frosthaven that faded for me. Frosthaven went down in ratings for me, which I've talked about. Gloomhaven and Frosthaven is a game system that I burnt out on. I have to do a full video on this, and I still didn't have everyone agreeing with me, because, I mean, that makes sense. Just because I put out a video doesn't mean people agree. I put out videos to explain my thought process, and some people might understand after the video, others might disagree. That's fine. You're allowed to disagree with me. That is a good part of actually a healthy relationship. But anyways, we had a question. Why do you rate a game based on how much you want to play it now? People don't rate video games that way. Campaign games are like video games. They are long, and when you complete it, you still had a great time. Even if you never want to play it again, you can still rate it based on your experience while playing it. It's a great question based on the whole Frosthaven, Gloomhaven thing, which again, I did a full video on. But the comparison to video games was an interesting one, and I thought it was a good comparison, which is why I want to talk about my reply here. And I replied to that, great question. For me, it's not about completion so much as fatigue. I never finished Sony Spider-Man because life got busy and I got distracted. But it's amazing and I would happily dive back in at any point. I never got fatigued on it, I just happened to not finish it. Whereas if the process of playing a game fatigues me on it, then that's different. I've finished legacy games and my opinion didn't waver, or sometimes I even played them again. I'm currently in the middle of a play of Charterstone again for the 2nd time. Same with some campaign games, but other campaign games have me sour on them in the process of playing. In the video game world, for example, Guild Wars 2 might be that game for me. I gave it hundreds of hours of my life, but while it started off satisfying, by the time I stopped playing, I had lost a lot of interest in what it was. And Guild Wars 2 is a very apt comparison here because of that note about video games versus campaign games and whatnot. Guild Wars 2 I gave hundreds of hours of my life, more than I gave Gloomhaven and Frosthaven. But it didn't leave me fulfilled. It felt like a journey that didn't have the payoff I wanted. It asked me to put so much time into it, and I didn't get where I was trying to go. And versus Guild Wars 1, which I've given hundreds of hours of my life to, Guild Wars 1 I still have fond memories of. I still think it's one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had in video games. I've tried diving back in and recapturing the magic, but I just don't think I have hundreds of hours of my life to invest in a dying ecosystem or nearly dead ecosystem the same way I used to. So I still have fond memories. I still kind of wish I had that bandwidth, but one of those games was amazing and one of those games left me And the amount of time you spend in something I don't think is a factor in how good it has to be for you. I think the amount of time is a factor, is an indicator of something. It's an indicator of some degree of hook. But whether that hook or not makes it a great game is a different conversation. That's why for me I think that Gloomhaven and Frosthaven I think are still excellent games. And I respect their place in the board game space. For me, the amount of time I spend playing them, given what it asked me to do, because the nature of the game is it asked me to play it that much, it meant that I did burn out in some of those games compared to other games where I've given just as much time and have not burnt out on. So, same kind of conversation I've had in the past around this conversation, but just an interesting comparison to the video game space. And then we have Sand. I have two different comments about Sand, because Sand, my content on Sand was critical. It was not overly positive. I tried to be fair, but it was also critical, and I very much called it a first impressions because I only played the game once, and I still critical on it, which I'm mindful of, but I covered in the review why I did that. And over here, we have the following. Let me see the response over here. Where are we? Okay, here we go. I'm not going to read that one. There's two of these, but one's really long. I'm going to go to the other one. I appreciate you mentioning in your review and saying it's not usual for you, but playing a game only one time before posting a video doesn't seem fair, particularly for a heavier weight game, and even more particularly for a game with an apparently confusing rulebook. Seems like pretty much any game deserves at least several plays and a few days to gather your thoughts. I've never played this game, so I have no opinions about it, but this is disappointing. Okay, we had a whole back and forth, a very healthy back and forth, but I said, sure, but first of all, I call it a first impressions, not a review, and secondly, I'm not going to play it again. A game like Sand, I didn't enjoy enough to play again. So the question then becomes, what's more valuable and or fair to my audience? These thoughts or no thoughts at all? Basically questioning, hey, I'm not going to play the game again, so would you rather, as the audience, would you rather have no thoughts or thoughts? And he replied, in my opinion, no thoughts at all. There are probably 5 or 6 games in my collection I really didn't like after a first play, but after a couple more became keepers. One play just doesn't seem like enough time to be fair to a game. I'm not saying a game needs dozens of plays before forming an opinion, especially for a professional reviewer, but one seems like too few even for a professional reviewer, particularly because the opinions of content creators like yourself can carry a fair amount of weight with your fans. I don't feel like potentially influencing the purchasing decisions of your fans is fair after a single play. I'm new to your channel, but definitely becoming a fan, yeah, but very kind back and forth. I replied, I think everything you're saying is reasonable, but I also think it's reasonable when people want those thoughts, which they often do. Meaning this isn't a situation of being wrong, it's just a matter of preferences and always playing a delicate game of figuring out what's the most fair to the publisher, designer, audience, and myself. And there aren't easy answers there. This is a common conversation, and I don't think there's an easy answer. I think it's very, very reasonable for someone to say, you know what, you shouldn't review a game. Not review, I call it first impressions, but you shouldn't even give a first impressions that's critical after a first play. It's not fair to the designer, it's not fair to the publisher. And I think it's a fair viewpoint. I genuinely do. But I also think I'm not going to play a game that I didn't enjoy that much. I really didn't enjoy Sand. It's not for me. So I'm not going to play it again. And now the question is, who are you not fair to? Do I force myself to play a game I didn't enjoy just so I can resent it that much more when I then cover it later and say, okay, I got my second play of it. Now I hate this game. Why'd you waste my time? I'm not going to be more positive with the game if I didn't enjoy it that much, or it's very, very, very unlikely. But it's not fair to the publisher to cover a game you've only played once. But it's not fair to the audience to not give your critical thoughts on games. One of the complicated balances I've always talked about is that people generally want more critical content, but they also want the games to have more plays. And that means they effectively want content creators to spend their time playing games they didn't enjoy multiple times so that they can fairly give critical content, which sometimes can happen. There are times I've given negative reviews and played the game multiple times, but it's hard to do that. It's very hard to find the right balance of being able to properly do that and also being fine. Some packages being dropped off. It's also hard being fair to both myself and my time, and to my friends and their time. I'm not going to ask a friend who played a game that they didn't enjoy to play it again, especially when they're not in any way benefiting from this channel. And I'm certainly not going to ask another friend to play a game that I know our first group didn't enjoy, be like, I hope I can rope them into it. So it's a very hard balance as to how to be fair in these contexts and situations. Now, when you are a channel like the Dice Tower, and you have a whole posse of people who it is their job, it's a little different, but I don't have that situation, and most reviewers don't. Which means I'm not trying to defend it or not defend it. I'm just trying to say it's hard. It's hard to get everything right, when sometimes it's just a question of there are no easy answers, but what is the most fair to your audience, to the publishers, and to yourself? And I don't know. I'm just trying to navigate the best I can. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the games I played. Games I played, as usual, these are a small subset of the games I played. Some of these will get reviews, some of these won't. Some of these already have reviews. We're going to start with Flowers, a game I've been playing on Board Game Arena recently and really been enjoying it. I don't think it's a keeper forever, but there's something compelling with the nature and the puzzle of Flowers as you try to line up groupings of cards, but also be mindful of the colors and adjacencies. It's very fast playing, it's very compelling. I wish there were more butterflies, which would make sense if you've played the game, but I overall enjoy Flowers. I don't have a physical copy of the game, don't expect a review just yet, but if I do get a physical copy, I'll review it at some point. But right now, know that currently, after like 6 plays already, I've thought it's pretty fun and I'm enjoying it. We also have So Clover, a game I always love. I have so much fun playing So Clover. I've played it like 5 or 6 times this week. It's just a game that consistently gets pulled out. It's just fast-paced, you know, trying to come up with a good combination of clues. I've talked about it. I've reviewed it. I think I've reviewed it. Did I actually... Is my review out on the game, or have I pushed it off? I have a review in the queue or live, one or the other. But I think So Clover is absolutely fantastic. High recommendation from me all the time. It's a game that's consistently grown with me, thanks to Jeremy Howard, by the way. He's the one who I originally got it. I'm sure I would have played it by now, but I got it because of his coverage of the game. I was like, wow, I'll try So Clover. I think I did a video of top 10 best surprises of 2022 together with Jeremy, and that was a fun one. Anyways, we have 5 tribes. 5 tribes, got a chance to play it this past week. Base game only, no expansions, but really enjoyed it. I still have fun playing 5 tribes. There's still a reminder as to why I consistently manage to stick around in my collection. I just think it's a good time. I played that game way back. It's one of the oldest games in my collection, but it's so fun and so well done. I think 5 tribes is fantastic. And then lastly, Rift Force. Rift Force from Capstone Games, who we've talked about earlier in this video. I think Riftstone is great. I think Riftstone is a lot of fun. I've been playing it on Board Game Arena. I no longer have the physical game. I actually should play with the expansion next because I haven't played the expansion yet. But Rift Force is a fun 2-player head-to-head game. It's one that there's reasons why it's not in my collection, and I don't think I'm getting it back. I don't think I love it. I think it's a good game. I've enjoyed it. Like, I originally gave it a 4 to 5, and then it eventually got lost because there's too many head-to-head games in the genre. But I also play games online as much as I do in person. Not as much, less than I do in person, but I play like a lot of games online, which means that having games that I can play online means they are easier to get tabled. Rift Force is a classic example of a game that I'm playing right now with my friend, with AP. We've gone back and forth. We used to play it together in person. Now we're playing it online a lot, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy Rift Force, and I still think it's solid, and because it's playable online, it has a little edge that other games might not. What happened to Hanamakoji? I thought I invited my friend to a game of Hanamakoji. I need to go see what happened to that invitation. Anyways, that's what we have over there. That's as far as the games I played, which brings us to the weekend review, starting off with this past Saturday. This past Saturday, I reviewed Lightspeed Arena. I thought it was fine. The problem is I prefer the non-app-based version, which is a weird position to be in, considering the entire point of this campaign is the app-based version of the game. Although they did add a non-app-based version you can go ahead and buy, but I think I think the game is expensive for what it is, and I think the original Stellar Conflict is just fine if you can get your hands on it. Nothing against the creators. I wish them all success. I just think you can get Stellar Conflict for, like, well, reasonably cheap, reasonably priced. Later on Saturday, we had Marrakesh Camels and Nomads, another review for an expansion, basically, an expansion review for Marrakesh Camels and Nomads. I think it's a great game. I think it's a good expansion. I don't love the camels. I do love almost all the other modules, or I really enjoy the other modules. I don't think Marrakesh needs this expansion, to be clear. I think this expansion has, like, my favorite is the asymmetric powers. I love those. So there are some things in the expansion I really enjoy, some things I'm okay with, and some things I probably won't play with that much, like the camels. The camels aren't even bad. It just adds rules complexity and didn't make the game more fun for me. It was just different with additional rules, and that's not a win for me. I gave it overall, I believe I gave it a 4 to 5. On Sunday we had, we had 8 games to try if you like 7 Wonders. This is a regular series I do of 8 games if you like X. The next one I'm doing, I'm actually going to be filming it probably today, but I don't know what goes up, is going to be 8 games to try if you like Pandemic. That's going to be coming up as well. And if you ever want to see comparisons of specific games, by all means ask. Usually for me to do an 8 games if you liked X, the other game has to be popular-ish. Doesn't have to be like the most popular game ever, but I'm not going to do like 8 games to try if you like City of Spies, Assorted 1942, which is a great game, by the way. I love that game, but it's not the most popular. But if you have any suggestions, 8 games if you like this, 8 games if you like that, I'll probably do the series at some point, because it's every like 3 or 4 weeks I pop one up. 8 games to try if you like this. On Monday, we had 2 back, not to back, going over crafting campaigns. I don't know if we'll have a 2 back or not to back this week. I'll have to take a look and see, but if not, I have plenty of backup videos I can do. On Tuesday we had a Rove First Impressions. Again, heavy disclaimer over here. I am both friends and business partners with the creator of Rove with Addicts Games. Different entity, but the same creator, the same owner of Addicts Games. We run Level Up Retreat together, and I'm friends with him. So obviously take anything with a heavy grain of salt. That said, I did put out a First Impressions video. I overall enjoy the world of Rove. while still needing to see more. Right now, it's in a position where it's like, okay, great, you're another campaign game, which is fun, but like similar to my coverage of Nova Aedes Renaissance, it's like, you're great, but like, do I care enough compared to so many games that are asking me for my time? Are you going to stand out? There's so many campaign games, and it's hard for them to stand out. So I like Rove, but like I've played Rove a bunch. By now I've played Rove, I don't know, 10 times plus. Like, it's a fun, enjoyable experience. But I really need to see the character growth before I know whether it lands for me. For me, Gloomhaven was a game that the thing that landed for me was building and iterating my character, and I haven't seen that in Rove yet. I've consistently been playing the same starting stuff again and again and again, and never really grown up with the characters. So I like it, but I need to see more at the same time. Later on Tuesday, we had a review for Forever Home. I think it's okay. I think Forever Home is okay. It did not impress me, unfortunately. It's way too light and didn't stand out, and also the theme feels pasted on. I think Dog Park is a better game for gateway games, but I haven't done my review of Dog Park yet, so we'll get to that later. And then on Tuesday we had a review for Dark Omen. Not review, sorry, not review. We had a preview for Dark Omen. This is a paid content, a paid preview for Dark Omen, done by Meg. Dark Omen is launching on GameFound, I believe, launched this week. It launched this week on GameFound, and you can go ahead and check that out. Then on Wednesday I did a ranking of CMON's games. I did one of these way back in the day. Like, I'm like 15 pounds skinnier if you look at that old video. I need to lose weight, but that's another story. I've been consistently managing to not lose and not gain weight for like 2.5 years, but once upon a time, I was 15 pounds lighter. Anyways, ranking CMON's games. I did a full ranking of their games, where things are up to now, because 3 years have passed, more games have been played, some games' rankings have changed. If you want to check out a full ranking of CMON's games, you can go ahead and check that out on Wednesday's video. Thursday was a preview video for Guns of the... Not preview, a gameplay, a paid gameplay for sponsored gameplay for Guns of the Old West, a currently active GameFound campaign. You can check that out. Some small rules errors, but the overall impression idea of the game you'll get by watching that video, and you can check the campaign out on GameFound. Later on Thursday, we had our live Q&A, as we usually do, and then lastly on Thursday, we had a Masters of the Universe Battlegrounds preview. Again, another sponsored video of Masters of the Universe Battlegrounds, another GameFound campaign. That's actually three GameFound campaigns for content there. Then Friday we had 3 questions to ask yourself before backing any game. This is basically a distilled, quick video of here's 3 basic questions to ask before backing. And again, we do content like this all the time on the channel. You know, what to ask, what to look at, how to be critical. And this is basically just trying to, for yourself, figure out, do you need to back this game? It's 3 basic questions. And of course, because it's a video I did, all those questions are broken down into sub-questions, so it's really like 700 questions, but like there's 3 questions, there's just 3 questions. There's also a 4th bonus question at the end. There's a bunch of questions. There's a bunch of questions to ask yourself, but you'll get the idea of the video if you watch that. And then today we are going to have 2 things. We're going to have a review for the Queen, almost a first impressions review. I don't even know how to, you can watch it. It's an interesting game. It's an interesting game because I think it's both really well done and also not for me. That's going to be For the Queen going up. I'm giving you spoilers. So watch the video. And then later today, we're going to have a we're going to have a gameplay for Rove. Now again, to be clear, the content, the first impressions and the gameplay are not sponsored content for Rove, but there still obviously is a conflict of interest, bias or whatnot there. So not sponsored content, but relationship bias in play. But we'll have a gameplay going up, and the nice part about gameplays is gameplays are not opinions, so that saves you time there. As far as next week we'll have a few things going up. We're going to have top 10 worst parts about being a content creator. To be very, very, very clear now and in the future, this is part of a series of videos I'm doing. If you watched my video, like, thank you for being here from 2 weeks ago, I said I'm going to do a bunch of video. Top 10 best parts of being a content creator, top 10 worst parts, 10 creator channels I recommend, 10 ways to make money in content creation. I'm going to be doing a bunch of videos around this kind of thing right now, and top 10 worst parts about being a content creator is not a complaint. I love what I do. I love it. But it doesn't mean that there aren't bad parts. There are bad parts and there are hard parts, and this is still a job. The best job in the world, but still very much a job. But that video will be going up this week, but again, not a complaint, just information and all that. And they're also going to have going over all my rolemates. Video going over all my rolemates, top 10 best rolemates in my collection, with a few bonus picks thrown in, because why not? As far as the games on the table, these are some games I hope to be playing this week. We'll see which ones I get to, but we have Nancy Narking over here, which I've played the original Discworld. I still have not played Nancy Narking. I've been trying to. We have Brass Birmingham. I'm going to be doing a Play This Not That on Brass Birmingham versus Anno 1800, which means I'm trying to get plays of both of those in. Honestly, Anno 1800 should be on the table. We have Furnace and Interbellum. I still haven't played the expansion. I like Furnace. I want to play the expansion. And then lastly, we have Cyclades, which I was playing Inish last week and found out that Meg has not played Cyclades, and AP and I were like, we should try to get that tabled, so we're going to try to get that tabled and see how that goes. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.